Is the market going to crash? Should I wait or should I buy now? I was talking with my parents over the weekend, and they told me that it might be best to wait because prices are really high right now, and everyone expects the market to crash. Does this sound like you? Now, this is one of my favorite questions because I think it prompts a really good conversation about where we're at with the market, where things are headed, and how to make a really good, sound financial decision on if it is a good time for you to buy or if it is a better option to wait. All right, guys, and before we get too far into this video, I just wanted to take a second to introduce myself. So, I'm Nick Riccio. I am a loan officer and a real estate investor in Boston, Massachusetts, and we put a lot of time and effort into these videos. So if you think this content is helpful, or if you know someone that might benefit from it, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and as well as find us on our TikTok and our Instagram channel where we put a lot of the same content. Everyone is afraid to overpay for a property, and they think that if they wait for the market to crash, then they will get the best deal for that property. And here's the reality. No one, and I mean no one, knows when or if the market is going to crash. And all we know is what history tells us and what the trends are. And what history does tell us is that typically the market does not crash. Property values typically don't decrease, even when we've gone through recessions throughout our time. The one thing that stays positive or continues to go up is property values. Now, the one exception that everyone seems to look back to and think to whenever the talk of a recession comes up is 2008. And I don't think you're wrong for looking at that, but what I would say is you want to look at all of the recessions that our economy has experienced and find out what typically happens in those recessions. And as I mentioned, what you'll find is that property values typically don't go down other than the big crash of 2008, which was tied specifically to bad mortgage lending. All right, and so now I want to go through an example, and this is something I do with all of my clients, which I call a cost of waiting analysis. And basically what I want to run through is what it would look like if you decided to buy now, and then also if you decided to wait and the market changes like we know it will, what that will look like as well. So let's take this first example where you're purchasing, we'll use a $500,000 property, and you're going to put 10% down as a down payment. So the loan amount is going to be $450,000, and let's assume the interest rate for today is 3.125%. Knowing that, the monthly payment without taxes, insurance, or mortgage insurance, just the principal and interest, will be $1,927. So now let's look at an example if we decide to wait. So using a historical number, let's assume that over a year's time, the market will appreciate 5%. So the $500,000 purchase that we just used, now that purchase price is going to be $525,000. So that brings us to a loan amount of $472,500. And now also in that time, if what happens like we think is going to happen, interest rates are going to rise. Because right now we're still at historical low interest rates, and everything tells us that interest rates are going to rise. So now let's assume that interest rate goes up to 3.75%. So now both your purchase price and your interest rate has increased. Now your total monthly payment will be $21.88. So now just by waiting and taking that gamble that the market would come down, if you were to buy at this point, your monthly payment is changing by about $260 per month, which annually is over $3,000 per month. Now, the other piece we didn't talk about is not only is your monthly payment changing, but your down payment is changing because now you're paying more for that property, so that same 10% is costing you more than it would have if you purchased now. All right, and so now the last scenario we're going to talk about is if the market does drop like everyone is waiting for, but the interest rates continue to rise, like again, we know is going to happen. So let's assume that that property value does decrease 5%. So that original $500,000 purchase is now going to be a $475,000 purchase price. Now, let's assume the interest rates continue to go up, and now we're at a 4% interest rate environment. So now that monthly payment is just over $2,000. So that would be an increase of over $100 per month and over $1,200 increase annually. All right, so now that we've looked at the implications of waiting, both on a monthly basis, an annual basis, and a down payment basis, we want to take a step back, look more at that 30,000 foot view, and consider the interest accumulation. So on option one, looking at the interest accumulation over a 15-year period, the total interest cost would be about $174,000. Looking at the second option, that would be a total cost over 15 years of about $222,000, or an increase of about $48,000. And our last option we looked at, the total interest over 15 years would be about $215,000, and that would be a total increase of about $42,000. So as you can see, there really is no benefit to waiting. If you're someone who is prepared and wants to buy, the idea of waiting for the market to crash, I think there's no scenario where it is or would be advantageous to do that. Now, here are just a few other things to consider about home ownership. So if you decided to wait, how much appreciation would you miss out on over that time period? Also, during that time while you're waiting, how much would your rent increase? And lastly, while you're owning that home, how much tax benefits would you miss out on if you decided to wait? So these are just a few things to consider, but I think when you look at the full big picture, I think everything points to it is a sound decision to purchase when you're ready, rather than waiting and trying to time a market or a market crash, because none of us really know when that would happen. So in closing, guys, my advice would be don't try to time the market. It's very similar to the stock market in that anytime you're trying to time the market is when you're going to get into trouble. So we know about both the stock market and the real estate market that over time, over long periods of time, it does continue to go up. If you're going to try to go against that and time the market, that's when you can get into trouble. So guys, I hope you found this really helpful and valuable. As I mentioned earlier, if you can like, subscribe, and share this video, and also follow us on our social channels. So we have our TikTok and our Instagram. We really appreciate you watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us.